Quick audio check. Yes, I see the bubble. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, one and all. How's everybody doing? How is everyone doing? I think I fixed my lighting a little bit here, out here in the African base. Finally fixed my lighting, so things are looking a little better. But how's everyone doing this day before Thanksgiving? I hope we're doing well. I hope that we're taking the right kind of actions and getting the right kinds of results, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers. So today is the fourth part, the fourth and final part of this particular series, which is the Why You Should Meditate series. And in this part, our intention is to demonstrate how meditation can give you the ability to make responsible decisions independent of internal and external factors. Now, I'll put quotations around the independent part because you're never quite completely independent. And we'll get into this as we flesh out the conversation more and more. But the main goal here, still answering the question, why should we meditate? And we've had three parts prior. The first was it gives you concentration. The other one was gives you equanimity. Third part gives you sensory clarity. And now we're talking about the fact that it gives you the space for freedom, in which I initially described as making responsible decisions, decisions for which you can indeed be held responsible. You can hold yourself responsible for making those decisions because you made them independent of internal and external perturbations and factors and selective pressures and what have you. Okay? So, this part, I would say, is the most abstract of all the parts, in the sense that we're not talking about the development of a very particular capacity such as concentration. Equanimity, sensory clarity. These are very specific capacities. Yes, 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 yes. Carlito says it's late. Well, it's late over here too. It is past midnight over here as well in Accra, Ghana time. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll be sharing my screen as usual. And let me restate again the simple sentence today. The simple hypothesis is that meditation gives you the ability to make responsible decisions that are independent of internal and external perturbations and so on and so forth. This should be a fairly simple stream, I believe. That's what I say about all the streams. That's what we say about all the streams. And then we get into all kinds of tangents and side streets, rabbit holes, and what have you. But basically, the idea here is we're going to talk about what this space for freedom entails. And the reason I call it abstract is because we're not talking about a capacity. Space for freedom is not like a capacity per se. It is a description of a mode of operation that results from the developing of these capacities. Let me get a one in the chat if you understand what I mean when I say that this particular part is abstract because we're not talking about a particular capacity, such as concentration, okay? You're going to exercise concentration, and here's why concentration is good. You're going to exercise equanimity, here's why it's good. Exercise sensory clarity, define it clearly, here's why it's good. This one, the space for freedom, it's not a particular capacity. It is, however, an abstraction of a mode of operation that results, which we'll describe, a mode of operation that results from the exercise of these particular capacities vis-a-vis your subjective consciousness and its interaction with the internal state and the external state, your ability to make decisions and be independent, if you will. Does any of that make sense? Or we smoking crack? That good Ghana crack. I see ones. I see ones. I see ones in the chat. Well, shout out to Wayman Brown. Wayman Brown in the house. Wayman Brown in the house. Enjoy your wrench, Wayman Brown. That was a great conversation we had last time. Shout out to Young Swift. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into this. And I'm assuming you guys see what I am sharing. And apologies for a few things. Apologies for the smoke detector. I've not been able to figure out I haven't gotten the battery needed while I'm here. So the smoke detector in my apartment in Accra, Ghana is tweaking, ladies and gentlemen. So apologize for the sound. Secondly, I will be switching back and forth. I'm only using the laptop, so I'm switching back and forth from StreamYard to YouTube, looking at and also screen sharing and so on and so forth. I don't have my usual setup, but I think I have been able to fix the lighting a little bit. So that part, I would say, apologize for the past. But right now, I think that our lighting is such that we are good. So you guys see the screen. So let's go ahead and get into it. Space for freedom. What is this freedom we're talking about? As usual, we throw some words around, we flesh out the hypothesis itself, we flesh out the concept that we're trying to describe, and we'll talk about why it is useful, the domains in which its utility lies, where it consists in, and so on and so forth. So, the word presence, agency, and power. Let's start there. And it seems like, let me go ahead and fix this. Okay, it's back up. So, presence. The first three parts talked about sensory clarity, equanimity, and concentration. If you have concentration and you have sensory clarity and equanimity, these, when active, describe the state of presence. We have heard many times it said to us or to others, or we've probably told other people to be present. And we do know the state of being, quote unquote, distracted, not being present. In order to have this freedom that we're talking about, the presence is the space that we're trying to describe. That presence gives you the space in order to have the freedom, and we will describe it further. If anything is not clear, let it be known. So again, the first three parts are concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity. Exercising these capacities will give you presence, will bring you into the moment, and being in the moment gives you that space to be presumably free, to be conscious, in other words. Okay? In order to make these responsible decisions that are independent of internal and external perturbations, as we said before, you need to be present, because if you're absent and you're not conscious, well, then you're not quite free, are you? So presence is the first term that we're stating here. The first term that we're stating. Because without presence, you do not have agency and you do not have power. We've all had that experience where we've driven a car in a state of complete unconsciousness for, let's say, miles and miles. And yes, it was us that drove the car. The mechanism works. It knows how to drive the car. It doesn't really need you to drive the car. But you were not present. You definitely did not have the state of presence or consciousness. So you did not have space for freedom, space in which you can presumably make choices that are independent of the automatic operations of yourself, if you will. Shout out to Red Sings the Blues. He says, "What's up, Ike? What's up? Red Sings the Blues." And mods, don't forget the links that I dropped earlier, the links to the music, the links to New Games Beats, which I played earlier. I left his Instagram link and the Cash App. Go ahead and intermittently drop those so that we can run a smooth ship over here. So salute to the moderators. Salute to Belle V. She says hello. Well, salute to you. Evron Mickey, shout out. So we're talking about the fact that meditation gives you the ability to make these decisions, responsible decisions that are independent of internal and external perturbation. We're saying here that being present is what gives you this space. The fact that we've discussed concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, the first three parts in this series, which I strongly urge you to go watch if you have not watched those. But for those of you who have been here throughout the three series, or throughout the first three parts in this series, of which this is the fourth and final, you understand quite clearly that presence, consciousness, being conscious, that is, not just consciousness, but being conscious, being present, is what we've been describing when we talked about developing these capacities, which are sensory clarity, equanimity, and concentration. The ability to focus, push things into the background and relax them away, focus on what's on the foreground. The ability to flow with the internal and external states. The internal state, as we know, being feeling in the body, image in the head, and talk in the head. And also the external states or the external environment coming in through our five senses. The ability to be able to dance with that without the tail wagging the dog, without you being controlled by it, but rather you creating the room for this observer. All these things, all these particular modes that I'm describing can be summed up in the word presence. And presence gives you agency, and presence gives you power. This is the kind of space for freedom that we're talking about. And again, let me get a 1 in the chat because I like to keep things not just interactive for interactive sake, but this is a conversation. This is not a podium whereby I just speak and without feedback from a live audience so that I can know that both you and those in the future are clear as to what exactly we are talking about. So, ability to make decisions, the space for freedom, and this freedom requires presence. Presence is gotten by the exercise of these particular capacities: concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity. And without this presence, you cannot have agency and power, and you cannot make decisions for which you can hold yourself responsible, at least in a way that you can be proud of, let's say. Does this make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Let me get a 1 if it makes sense. And don't forget to hit the like button as you guys come in, ladies and gentlemen. Doing pretty good on the likes. Yes, 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 yes. Skew Dog says it makes sense. Good. So this particular part, as I said, is an abstraction. It encapsulates, wraps up everything up in a little bow. We've been talking about particular capacities. We've been talking about feeling, image, and talk in the body and how we need to bring attention to it via concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. We're saying now that we can wrap all that stuff in this word presence, and presence is what gives you that space to make choices. In other words, have agency. This is not a conversation about free will, which may or may not exist. But from an intuitive standpoint, you guys have said yes, you guys have said one, that you understand what I mean. Whether or not you have free will, you understand that the freedom that I described vis-a-vis presence, agency, and power. We're never quite completely independent, and we'll make that clear as we go along. Okay? So, next thing I'm saying here is the ability to choose the level and the mode of operation. The ability to choose the level and the mode of operation. Let me bring that back up. Here is what I mean by that. So, in all these videos, we've been talking about sensory clarity, equanimity, concentration. And we've been talking about using that to observe your subjective consciousness. We have broken down your subjective consciousness into three aspects that are relatively independent of each other, but all interact. Being feeling in the body, image in your head, and talk in your head. In other words, mental visions. You start getting perturbed, okay? So let's just describe a situation, because I like these videos to be relatively independent, even though they're in a series, but they're so long that we need to refer back to material that has already been covered. Plus, everything is all one nice little ball. Your subjective consciousness in these particular capacities, and the freedom and the presence and so on and so forth, is one nice little ball. So it makes sense to traverse the circumference of this ball each time we say certain things. So I'm just going to give another example. For example, we've been talking about anger or feeling bad and so on and so forth. And we say that any particular subjective experience you have, any phenomena whatsoever that will ever happen to you from your birth till you end up in the coffin, is going to be displayed in feelings in the body, image in the head, and talk in the head. And there is nothing else that you will ever experience. So let's say now you're a little dehydrated. So there's a feeling in the body. You may not even be able to sense it yet. But then it manifests itself by certain images in your head that start making you angry. Let's say about something your mom told you last week or 10 years ago, or your ex from high school, or starts making you feel self-conscious about something stupid you did a long time ago. Okay? And that image in the head will cause more feeling in the body. And then there's certain active responses. Let's say you start clenching your jaw, you furrow your eyebrow. Okay? This will put more feeling in the body, reinforce the images in the head, and talk in the head. Or you feel certain intuitions or certain feelings. Let's say in a novel state, you have certain anxiety. Anxiety is in the body. You have this sharp feeling, let's say butterflies in your stomach. We've all heard that one, right? We know butterflies in your stomach. Butterflies in your stomach come up, a little bit of the heating up of the temples, maybe a bead of sweat starts forming here, and then images in the head are running. We're saying that using concentration, equanimity, sensory clarity, in other words, practicing the practice of presence, we want to use it to observe these patterns, which we have in past referred to as weather patterns. We're calling them weather patterns because they are fairly independent of anything you can do about them, and that they're going to continue to happen. The weather will happen. The planet needs the atmosphere, and the atmosphere will do atmosphere stuff. You as an organism will do feeling, image, and talk stuff. That's how you're built. It'll continue to happen. but you can be a thermometer, a barometer, and a windmill. In other words, an observer, a watcher with a dashboard that measures and gauges and therefore is not moved by these things, but rather watches them. We have certain feelings, like we have certain statements that allude to this, such as being in your head. If you're in your head, that means there's something about you that can be separated from your head. We talk about being in your feelings. If you're in your feelings, then there is a part of you that can be separated from your feelings. In other words, you can be out of your feelings and out of your head. So, feeling, image, and talk. Now, I'm talking about the modes of operation, being able to choose the modes of operation. I went through that particular meandering diatribe in order to say this. Let's just call one state of operation as complete unconscious being in your feelings and being in your head. Let's state that that is one mode of operation. Okay? You're completely unconscious. You're seeing red. You're completely angry. You don't know what you did. You don't know what happened. Almost like being blackout drunk. So that's one mode of operation, whereby you're completely unconscious, completely in feeling, image, and talk. And then we said, hey, we can choose to step out of that and choose a second mode of operation, which is the temperature gauge, the pressure gauge, the wind speed gauge, observing the weather patterns, observing the dashboard. That is another mode of operation, whereby you are watching you happen. It gives you a different mode of operation. There can be another mode of operation. It is my contention they're like infinite in terms of, it's like infinite regression. Number one, your pure feeling, image, and talk. That's one mode. Number two, you can watch feeling, image, and talk. Number three, you can watch the watcher. Number four, you can watch the watcher of the watcher, and so on and so forth. Let me get a one in the chat if this makes sense, vis-a-vis what I mean by the modes of operation. The base mode of operation is you are just pure feeling, image, and talk. You are purely unconscious, okay? Pure feeling, image, and talk, purely unconscious. And then number two, you can stand back and you can watch the dashboard, but you can even create another space whereby you're watching the person who's watching the dashboard. And you can go on and on and on and on and on and on forever in that mode. And over here, I say it's like Russian nesting dolls. And I'm going to describe a little bit further how this could be possible. What do you mean, watch the watcher? The first step is easy, let's say. And yeah, I was doing some calculations earlier. The first step is easy. You can easily say, well, yeah, I get the idea of not being, or of, completely being in my feelings and being in my head. That's mode one. Let's say. That's a way of operating in the world. You can go about your whole day being completely unconscious that way. So in fact, most people do. Most people, most of the time, are just completely unconscious. And then you can say, hey, I can do this practice where I go to mode two. Mode two, however, requires you to do certain things. Like let's say you're breathing and you're observing. Okay, this is mode two. You're hearing the high pitched noise that's in your ear. You're watching the shallowness and the depth of your breathing, or you're perhaps controlling that a little bit and using it as a means of checking the feeling in your body. So mode two is almost like an instrumentation person, okay? You're checking gauges and so on and so forth. And this is an active mode. Now, how can you possibly go to mode three? What could mode three possibly look like? Again, we don't like talking nonsense here, right? Yes, young Swift, unconscious, kind of like NPCs in video games. Exactly. James E. Jr. finally caught a live stream. Yeah, I saw your comment on the other video earlier about going back to your boring routines. That was good. So basically, I describe mode one, unconscious, NPC, in your feelings, in your image and talk. Boom, we know that. We know that. We know that mode. Mode two, having gone through these videos now and also having lived a certain amount of time on this earth, we know that we can step out of mode one and watch feelings and not necessarily act on them. We can watch image and talk in the head, not necessarily act on them. We talked about being able to then create concepts, being clear as to how feelings, image, and talk interact with each other, all the different modes, all the different ways in which they create your experience. Because whatever you experience comes in feeling, image, and talk. But feeling, image, and talk, therefore, has many, many, many different arrangements, kind of like this kaleidoscope. And the more you're able to observe it, the more you're able to see all these different arrangements. So that's mode two. But how can you watch the watcher? Okay, so mode two is the watcher of the feeling, image, and talk kaleidoscope. Well, how can you watch the watcher? Well, it's simple. It happens automatically. The more you practice something, the more your unconscious takes over. What do I mean by that? I mean simply that the more you practice mode two, the more you can do mode two without taking up your conscious attention. Again, we're talking about choosing the mode of operation. We say your operations are like a Russian nesting doll, and I believe that they're infinite. In other words, you can create an infinite number of watchers. Mode one, you're unconscious, you're an NPC, non-player character, like in a video game. You're completely controlled by the matrix, feeling, image, and talk matrix. Mode two, you step up and you start watching feeling, image, and talk matrix. Mode three, you've practiced the watcher so much that you can outsource the watcher to your unconscious. In other words, you're now just operating more unconsciously, just like you can outsource driving. When you first learn how to drive, it's very conscious, but later you outsource it to your unconscious, just like riding a bicycle. You don't know how to tell anybody how to ride a bicycle. No one can indeed tell anyone how to ride a bicycle, right? Because you're not the one riding the bicycle. It's been outsourced to your unconscious. The unconscious just needed to fall a few times and then it figures it out. So, same thing here. You can step from mode one, which is unconscious, feeling, image, talk, to mode two, watching the feeling, image, talk. And if you practice your concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity enough, they too can now become unconscious. And then you step up to the watching of the watcher, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And the more you can do this, the more layers that you have, the more freedom that you have. But I say you can choose which mode you want to operate in because, for example, you may want to choose to be in NPC mode. You may want to choose, and it's a legitimate choice, as long as you're choosing. And it's about the freedom, the agency, the power, the ability to make choices in responsible choices that are independent of internal and external perturbations, selection pressures, and so on and so forth. So you can choose to say, I'm going to go down into my feelings now, and I'm just going to be unconscious. Or you can choose to go to mode two and say, let me actively do mode two. Or if you have a mode three, you can go up there. Point is, the more you do, the more freedom that you have. You're never quite completely free. And I will be repeating that as I go along. I say you're never quite completely free, you're never quite completely independent. In the last, the previous session or the previous part of this series, part three, I said there is no God mode, okay? In case you're thinking, How do I get to God mode? No, it's just going to be Russian nesting dolls. One guy watching the other guy, one guy watching the other guy, one guy watching the other guy. As you can see, the nesting dolls are identical. They're all you. The feeling, image, and talk is a version of you. The guy that then watches the feeling, image, and talk is another version of you. The guy that watches feeling, image, and talk is another version of you. And the guy that watches the guy that watches the guy that watches feeling, image, and talk, and so on and so on and so on. But there is no point where you completely disconnect and you go up to Mount Olympus. As I said, perhaps maybe when you leave this earth, maybe there are two things that are possible. One is, well, of course, you could just go blank and nothing happens, right? But just thinking about modes of operation in terms of subjective experience, all we have is feeling, image, and talk. Let's say it's three-dimensional. All we have is these three dimensions. We have feeling in the body, image in the head, talk in the head. That's all our subjective experience. And perhaps there could be more ways to experience, more levels of experience, more dimensions to experience that we do not have and that we do not see. That's one thing. Another thing is that perhaps you can be completely independent and, untangled, right? But the point is, you can choose the particular mode you want to be in, the particular level you want to be in, how aloof you want to be, let's say. You can choose to be super aloof, where you're like 5 levels up, where feeling, image, and talk is here, and you're watching the guy that's watching the guy that's watching the guy that's watching the feeling, image, and talk, right? And where you develop these other guys is by practicing your meditative practices to get more concentration, equanimity, and sensory clarity on your feeling, image, and talk complex, such that you're practicing so much that now you can do it unconsciously. And your conscious mind is no longer needed for that watcher. And then now you can start to create the other watcher with your conscious mind, right? And then that part gets more and more unconscious, outsourced to the unconscious. And then you can start to create another layer. So there are layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of presence that you can bring to your particular operation. So the first power it gives you, the first power, the first choice that you can make is you can choose what level you would like to be at. So let me go over there. Effortless, exactly. That's what I mean. TY, or was it Ty Ray 99? It takes effort whenever you're doing something for the first time. So I'm saying the watcher that watches feeling, image, and talk takes effort. It is recording, it is looking at the breath, it is listening to the sound of the ear, it is doing this and that, whichever particular meditative practice you're doing, whether it's formal or you're just doing a living meditation, a walking, talking, working meditation. It takes some effort, takes some conscious effort, some conscious energy, right? And then it becomes more and more effortless, and you can create another layer whereby now you're watching this effortless operation, where now your watcher has now become an automated thing. Just like your feeling, image, and talk are automated, your watcher of feeling, image, and talk becomes automated. And now you have another person that watches that particular set of habits. You can call it habits now. In other words, you are now habituated to watching your feeling, image, and talk. And now you can watch the habits by which you watch your feeling, image, and talk. And on and on and on and on and on ad infinitum, it does not end. The more and more and more you create, the more space for freedom that I claim that you have. This is a claim. This is a bit of an intuitive claim. It's a hypothesis that we are fleshing out as we talk about here. Okay, and that's why I say this is the most abstract of all the parts in this series, because it's not talking about, oh, here's a particular capacity, here's how you do it, makes sense, completely intuitive. But we're talking about, okay, now that you have all these capacities, how can we abstractly describe who you are and your modes of operation? So I'm using terms like Russian nesting dolls. I'm saying there's an infinite regression. You can watch the watcher, the watcher, the watcher. These things are very abstract. These are not, you know, it's not me saying, oh, concentration, you get it, right? You focus. No, it's what does a Russian nesting doll have to do with you? You're not a Russian nesting doll. Neither are you something that has infinite regression. So by abstract, I mean symbolic, creating an image and a vision. But I think that as we go along, we can agree. Carlito says, but don't you think it's the same watcher that looking further? Yes. That is another imagery, and that's why I say this is again abstract, and this is a hypothesis. We're not going into some physical space and opening up the hood and checking something to see which watcher is watching. It is a way of conceptualization, and I think that it is 100% correct to say that there's only one watcher, but what you're doing is you're creating habits. As I said, base level habit is to just be in feeling, image, and talk. Then you step up and through exercise, you create the habit of watching image, feeling, and talk. You exercise it so much that it becomes a habit that is automated, fairly effortless, and unconscious. And then you start watching that. Okay. So I 100% agree. It's not like you have many, many, many watchers. You is this one observer, okay, that can go and create many layers of habits that watch lower and lower modes of operation. The lowest mode of operation we describe is completely being unconscious in your feeling, image, and talk realm. You can analogize it by just driving a car unconsciously for miles and not recognizing it. But in real life, what we mean is how we just simply live day to day, being triggered, if you will, just kind of not noticing where the car is going. In this case, the car being ourselves, where we don't know that today is a day that we're liable to cuss someone out because we didn't notice that our breathing has been shallow all day since we woke up. We didn't notice that there's an image going on in our head that is upsetting us, that then sucks us into a particular thought pattern, okay, that then reinforces feelings in our body and releases cortisol in our bloodstream and so on and so forth. Carlito says, I understand now. Yes, 100%. Yes. So you have one power of observation. It simply has to be exercised to create layers and layers and layers and layers and layers so that you can go down all the way to just pure feeling, image, and talk, or you can continue to go higher and higher and higher. Okay. And just like, let's say, lifting weights at the gym, some days you're not able to do your best, right? You're not able to get to your highest level. And these have there are all kinds of either hormonal or hydration or digestion, simple, reasonable, intuitive, measurable reasons why this might be the case, right? Why you cannot go all the way to mode 5 today, okay? Just like you may not be able to work out as hard today. But that is what I mean. Self awareness is what it's all about. Self awareness, bringing presence to the internal and the external world. The internal world is the one that we need to work on because the external world, because that is the internal world for each individual is the center of the universe. Work on that, everything else is filtered through that. And everything else, in terms of your agency and power, flows out from that. Internal world, again, feeling, image, and talk. We put 3 dimensions to it to make it simple. The most complex dimension, in terms of many parts, is feeling, but is the easiest one to get access to because it's in the body. Okay, it has many parts because they're internal sensations, which we call emotions and intuitions, right? You have a feeling like an intuition, or you have an emotion, which is a complex number of feelings, like anger, which is the easy one to describe because it's heavy, it's hot, and we know about the heat in the air and the raised heart rate and the clenching and things like that. Easy to get access to the body. However, image in the head and talk in the head is something that people often neglect. Even people who do a lot of meditative kind of practice. Let's say maybe they're just good runners or they're exercisers or they're NBA players and they get in this, they need to get in the zone, which is a state of high concentration and high relaxation, to do these free throws, right? Um, but they may ignore the head stuff. A lot of them actually at the highest levels don't because they know how to do the visualization thing. They know that visions in your head are just as important. Okay, just like you need to loosen up your muscles, right? Shake it off. And we can learn very much from dogs in this. One of the first things that I noticed when I started meditating about 20 years ago now was I immediately understood what dogs do when they shake it off. Do you guys understand what I mean? Or if you guys know what that dog thing? They shake off both good and bad things, by the way. So if you pet a dog, which is a good thing, oh, the dog is enjoying it, blah, 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 blah. After you're done, they shake it off. Okay. Let me get a one in the chat if you guys understand the relationship between all these things we've described in all these four parts of the video and being able to shake off things from the body so that you have space for freedom. Because if you don't shake it off, something is congealing, something is coalescing and binding you. And it could be pleasure or it could be pain. Both good or bad sets of feeling, image, and talk need to be shaken off. You don't get on the roller coaster ride, in other words. I'm not saying, in other words, don't say, oh, I'm just gonna I get on the roller coaster ride when it goes up. Well, guess what? It's gonna come down too. But the point, and that's why this whole thing about space for freedom, the point is not about trying to avoid bad feelings or trying to chase good feelings. That's not the point. The point is freedom. The point is to get off the ride, okay? So that you can choose to get on and what level you want to get on the ride at, okay? And even dogs and ducks and stuff like that, like after ducks, for example, after they fight, they do all kinds of stuff. They also do the shake off stuff. They flap their feathers and shake it off. And now they're gone. It's gone. Okay. Now they're chilling again. It's all good again. Okay. So in that regard, they're a lot smarter than a lot of human beings, even. Okay. And we've all observed them do this, and we have bodies, so we know what they're doing. That's why we have that intuition that, oh, that's what the dog is doing. It's loosening up the body. So I went on that tangent there to talk about also the mind, that the way you need to loosen up the body, you need to also practice loosening up the mind. In other words, go in there, observe what's going on so it doesn't catch you unawares. Because it's not visible, it's not in your body, we tend to think we can ignore it. But no, you need to go in there, be like, hey, hey, stop. And it's very easy. Where are the images? They're in front of your eyelids, by the way. That's why, or where's the talk? It's in your ear. That's why we say, we hear voices in our head, right? We don't hear voices in our hands. If you're hearing voices in your hands, if you're hearing voices in your hands, then you got some other problems. Keeping things light here, but to get the point across. Why did I say that? I say that because it's easy to use the body as an access point to get into this internal image and talk. In other words, you want to see what the images are going on in your head. It's in front of your eyelids. So you can close it and then just look at that screen over there. Okay, not always easy to detect, and there are always many, many, many layers, and there's always some that you cannot see, hence the subconscious or the unconscious, right? And you can do this test when you're going to sleep, and when you're going to sleep you can watch how images in your head drift into dreams, right? So they're always there, and there are always many layers. There's some simple layers about some simple thoughts, maybe just simple images of things you just saw. Okay, that's a given. Those are just kind of reflective images. And then you're going to have, let's say, certain thoughts, maybe an image of someone. Maybe it's an image of your mom or something that's just there in your head. And then there's many, many, many layers, okay, that you cannot see. And then sometimes it's also relatively blank, sometimes it's relatively busy, so on and so forth. But how do you get access to that? It's right there in front of the screen, right? It's not anywhere else. It's not in heaven. Okay? Where are the voices? They're right here in your ear. So you want to hear them? Stop and listen to the ringtone. We all know what the ringtone is. We all have a ringtone. It's like a dial tone. For those of you old enough to pick up the old phones, there's always a dial tone. Our ears have that dial tone. You guys all have it. I have it too, right? You listen to the dial tone. That way you know you got access to your ear. And then see what mumbo jumbo is going on internally. It could be songs, it could be whatever. It could be things that are urging you to enunciate them, like complaining about how you've been wronged or something like that, right? You need to watch those things carefully because they will throw you off just as much as a creak in your neck would throw you off. So, as you want to shake things off in your body, and breathe deeply and calm yourself down, you also want to get in the habit of getting into your head, the image and the talk, and dusting the cobwebs as well. So, we so far in this particular first slide have put a nice boundaries around this space for freedom. We're saying that the freedom is presence. The space that is for the freedom is presence. And that presence gives you the agency and the power to act. And one of the first kinds of acts you can do is to choose what level you want to operate in. Are you going to operate purely in feeling, image, and talk land? You're going to step up to this other level, and that there are infinite number of levels depending on how high you have built this mountain. You build the mountain. You exercise the powers of the watcher until it becomes effortless and unconscious. And then you start watching the habits of the watcher, which you created. You created habits of the watcher. And that watching becomes effortless. And you can keep on creating these layers of upon layers of habits so that you can tweak, okay? Because whatever habits you have in terms of how you watch your feeling, image, and talk are not perfect. You need to step back and be able to change those as well. Okay. So, and this is master level stuff. And now I'm just looking at the chat. Just looking at the chat. Yes, yes, yes. William Brown says we are both our best friend and worst enemy through our perceptions. Yes, yes, yes. And as I said in the last thing, you want to be able to, whenever you're feeling bad, or good, by the way, because here's the thing, feeling good is like a bonus in two ways. Number one, enjoy it while it lasts, right? You're like, hey, you know what? I feel good today. It's a very good thing when you wake up on the right side of the bed. Pay attention to it because people always pay attention to waking up on the wrong side of the bed. People always pay attention to their low moods. But when you're in a high mood, when you're in high spirits, if you will, pay attention to it. Number one, because you want to be able to enjoy it while it lasts. But number two, because it is a good way to practice your meditative habits, right? Because to bring presence, okay, because there's a simple formula we can use. Feeling, image, and talk is happening, right? Whatever's going on in feeling, image, and talk, multiplied by presence equals to meditative work, okay? So if you can bring a lot of presence, for example, to a little bit of feeling, image, and talk, just a calm day, nothing particularly crazy going on in your body or in your head, but you can bring a lot of presence to it. Let's say 10 units of presence on a 1 unit day of feeling, image, and talk equals 10 units of meditative work. These are arbitrary numbers I'm using, and there is no such formula, but I am communicating, okay, simply. Don't go saying I said there's a formula. This is not mathematically rigorous. I'm just using it to appeal to your intuition. I would say also conversely, if you have a 10 day, a high day of a lot of perturbation in the feeling, image, and talk, if you can bring 1 unit of presence to it, you're still doing 10 units of work. Let me get a 1 in the chat if you understand what I mean by that. I'll repeat that presence multiplied by whatever's going on with you in your feeling, image, and talk, presence times that equals meditative work. If you can have a calm day and you can bring 10 units, okay, a day of 1 unit, and bring 10 units, okay, I'm seeing ones in the chat, 10 units of presence, you've done 10 units of work. Or you can have a hectic day, but if you can manage to bring 1 unit of presence into it, 1 unit of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity to that, you're doing the same amount of work, okay? I say that to say this. When you have a day that is full of joy, it is easy to observe. So if you have a 10 unit day, but it's all good vibes, use it. Okay? That's your best friend. Because when you want to develop that capacity, because you want to develop your capacity, right? Because you're going to need it on that day when it's 10 units of agony. Okay? And you're going to find that it's easier to observe pleasure in the sense of you being more willing. But you still have to focus on it a lot because pleasure wants to control you just like pain wants to control you. They both will lead to suffering in the end. But that's life, right? That's the beauty of life. Beauty of life is in the suffering. So, let me see here. Be glad of the perturbation. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Goldie Jones says, I try to replicate my high vibes when I'm feeling down. That way, I do enjoy my good feelings and experience them to the fullest. Another reason why you want to be able to pay attention to your good feelings is that you want to notice the arrangement, the particular arrangement of feeling, image, and talk. As I said, since there's so many kinds of experience that you have, well, they're not so many actually, but but there are many arrangements of feeling, image, and talk, right? You want to build concepts of them. You want to know, just as I said in my previous video, that there are many different kinds of feel bad. There are also many different kinds of feel good. And the more you get familiar with this, okay, the more you're able to say, well, this is a water glass and this is a mug. And that over there is a pimp cup and this is a chalice and this is on and on and on, right? By noticing, by bringing awareness to them, because they have different forms. In this case, they'll have different shapes, colors, textures, forms, and so on and so forth. All these things that I described are all vessels. Cup, mug, chalice, stein, glass. but they're all different. So you want to know when you're having a cup good day versus a chalice good day versus a glass good day. Same thing you want to know when you're having a pimp cup bad day versus a Stein bad day versus a mug bad day, because they're all different. And the more clarity you have on the type, the more you're able to know the compensatory actions to take. Okay? Hence this whole space for freedom. Josiane. Indeed. Indeed. And the reason I have said over and over again that this is a abstract presentation, more abstract than the others, is because I want to leave the room for you to understand that this is my symbology, my images, my talking about Russian dolls, my talking about infinite regression, my talking about watching the watcher, so on and so forth. It is not saying there's water in a glass, it's H2O, and can be independently verified by observable reality, and so on and so forth. In other words, it's communicating an idea that will appeal to your intuition, but you will have different symbols, different analogies, and so on and so forth. Hence, that's why I said, and hence why it is indeed the most abstract one, because we're describing something that's not particularly direct here, which is the space for freedom. Yes, Carlitos, okay. Some people say the song is tinnitus or tinnitus, right? I always thought is the song of silence. Yeah, so tinnitus is when you have when it's loud, okay? That ringing in your ear. And for everybody, we have low ringing days, days with low ringtones, and days with high ringtones. By the way, that's another clear sign. That's something to watch for, by the way. That is an internal state that you should watch for, okay? In other words, in other words, there's a big difference between a day when there's a heavy ringing in your ear versus a day when there's low ringing. Let me tell you this, okay? And the thing is, even movie makers know this. And perhaps I'm going to go somewhere you may not be expecting. Let me get a one in the chat if you understand the scene I'm about to paint. In many movies, okay, many movies, and perhaps the recent example that comes to mind is the Joker movie, okay? When something of very high intensity is taking place, okay, I think it also was used in this particular trope was used in the um, Godfather movies. Okay, so someone is in a high intense state and they just shot somebody or they just watch somebody get stabbed. What do you, a lot of times the movie maker will play that tone that you hear in your ear, okay? They'll play the tone. The sound goes up like, whee, and the character, you can sense the characters in a high state of agitation. The Joker, when the Joker in the Joker movie shot those people in the plane in the subway, that was the sound that was playing in his head. Similarly, in many other movies where they try to display a very intense state, they play that sound. You too, having lived in a body for a while, know that a high sound day is a little bit more intense in terms of that ringing in your ear than a low one. Okay? And as a matter of fact, when we start getting agitated, along with the heating up of the body and the heating up in the ear, the ringing in our ear actually goes up. the angrier we get. Okay? And we, yes, like Kill Bill. Look, it's or like your body last time it got agitated, right? So it's not I'm not saying anything that's kind of new, or it is what it is, right? Point is we should pay attention to the level of that noise and correlate it with other things that are going on. Okay? You in other words, to be able to differentiate between a cup and a stein and a glass and a this and a that. That's why we're doing these things. We want to be able to say, oh, high level of ring in my ear tends to go along with this, and the other. So I'm having that kind of day. There is a that kind of agitation day which is dominated by high level ringing in the ear. There is another kind of agitated day that is dominated by these kinds of high vibrations in the body where you feel like your skin is crawling. Okay. You're getting the creepy crawlies, right? You feel like you're trying to crawl out of your skin. That's a different kind of agitation day. Okay. The ability to be able to differentiate between all these different agitation days and what needs to be done in order to have equanimity towards them is key. Hence, in the last video, I said that equanimity gives you the ability to create these concepts. And perception precedes concepts. You need clear perception so that you can be able to perceive, to create the concepts. So that you can differentiate between cups, glasses, steins, chalice, pimp cups. Because right now, we just seem to have the vision of it's a vessel, right? Just saying it's a vessel is similar to saying, oh, I just feel bad. But understanding that there's a cup bad versus a glass bad versus a shut glass bad, that's when you're really cooking. Okay? What's up, Nicer? Shout out to Nicer in the house. The blood vessels throbbing. Exactly. Blood vessels throbbing in there in the ear. You might hear that along with the high pitched sound as well. Blood vessels throbbing in the ear. Yeah, it's a good trope that movie makers use as well to kind of signify the state that the person is in, because we know these states, right? Saving Private Ryan in many movies. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, Young Swift. We're describing something intangible, and it's not even a capacity that's tangible. We're talking about, well, let's talk about space for freedom. These are abstract things. We have to use symbols and examples and so on and so forth. Again, so this very first scene here, we talk about presence, we talk about agency, the ability to choose your mode of operation. We talk about these modes of operation, which is where we spent the most time in analogizing them with Russian nesting dolls, right? Mode one, unconscious mode, you're just purely in your feelings and in your head. Mode two, you're watching your feelings, image, and talk. And you're creating habits of the watcher. Mode three, you've habituated the watcher so much that it is now a habit. It is now an unconscious thing that happens effortlessly. And then you start to watch that so that you can modify it. In other words, you cannot make any choices until you create a layer above. Okay? In order to make any choices, you need to create a layer above the particular operation, right? You're trying to have choices regarding your feeling, image, and talk. So you create mode two, which is the person that watches it, right? And then you want to go to mode three so that you can watch the watcher and observe its habits so that you can be like, you know what? I need to change certain things. Maybe I need to not listen to my this so much, or maybe I need to, so on and so forth. The space for freedom, space for freedom, while understanding that we're not ever completely free. And then I'm going to add here, real quick, that being unstifled and relaxed, okay, is another capacity that this gives you. In other words, we're just saying, and this part I think it's intuitive, fairly intuitive. If you have this space for freedom, you're unstifled and relaxed. And without using intuitive things, let me just go directly to examples like, or let me put it this way, appeal directly to your imagination and say, hey, when you think of people saying, you know, I want to be free, Freedom. It is not a state of agitation, okay, that they're thinking of. The freedom of a caged bird, the freedom of the clear blue sky. This is a state of relaxation. So, need not dwell on this part too much. Again, this is about why you should meditate. So, we're giving the utility and the value of it while describing the various modes, right? So, we're doing several things here. We're talking about what exactly is this freedom, and also we're talking about its attributes and its utility. So, all three going together in a pile. Now, independence from internal and external factors. Uh, this one is a pure utility in terms of, and this is what we started out talking about, just a restatement of the hypothesis that this particular capacity, which is meditation, working on the capacity of meditation, which we have broken down into just three parts, which is concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. And these parts have all kinds of different subparts. And generally speaking, we're applying concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity to feeling, image, and talk. And these things are going to dance and dance and play forever. And it's a lifelong exercise. This does not stop. This, in fact, is what living is, I would say. The human life is concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity brought upon the animal instincts, manifesting itself in feeling, image, and talk. Everything else is subhuman. And you can live a subhuman life, as a matter of fact, most people do, right? Most people live a subhuman life, or at least for a certain part of our lives, we live a subhuman life as well. One of the things we mentioned here is that you can choose to live that superhuman life, but first you need to have stepped above it. When you step above it, you can choose to dive in and become an NPC again, a non player character. But you can always step out again. But if you are just a non-player character the whole time, completely absorbed in your feelings and absorbed in your head without knowing any of this space for freedom, then that's really a non-human life. Free like the Ohio players. So here we're saying, and by here I mean the slide that I'm showing over here. We are saying that having this independence will make you make better decisions. And now this is kind of like a value judgment, okay? I would like to see, is there any disagreement? Because this is a spot for which there could be disagreement. You could say that, no, I don't really think that me stepping away, creating mode two, let's say, stepping away and watching my feeling, image, and talk, creating some separation, watching it as a weather pattern, being the barometer and the thermometer and the windmill, as opposed to just being the weather. I don't think that I make better decisions with that. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that you make better decisions when you can be at a certain remove from the circumstances? Is it true that we should let cooler heads prevail? Because there's a lot of intuition, there's a lot of language, there's a lot of idioms that are out there, such as which I just mentioned, which is let cooler heads prevail, for example, right? That are out there that suggest that this is the case. But do we agree? Do we agree? Do we agree? Because it's not necessarily an obvious thing, you know, that separation will make you make better choices. And since I'm saying better, which is a value judgment, right? Saying yes. And yes, determined by the individual, correct. Yes. But I would put forth the argument that it is better to have the choice to be able to step back. Because as a matter of fact, now I will add my little caveat that I put in here all the time, which is the ability to dive down to mode 0 or mode 1 or whatever, to the ability to go into your anger, into your lust, into your shadow side, your dark side, in a masterful way is key. But you can never do that until you create the upper layers. Let me get a one in the chat if you understand what I mean. You need to be able to pick up the knife of anger or the whatever of lust or whatever little crazy arrangement of feeling, image, and talk or capacity that we have in an animalistic form. You need to be able to go down there and do it well. But being a master of the knife requires that you have actually created levels above the knife, and then you can come down, grab it, use it, and go back up. Okay? So it may be the case that you like to be down there in knife fights all the time, but you're not going to be very good unless you have that space for freedom. That part I will say, I will insist upon. That part I would assert. That part I would argue. Hence, choosing, being able to go with, I want some space from this, or I want to just go into the heat of the moment with this. I want the smoke, as they say, right? You can be like, you know what? It's all smoke today. It's a smoke show. I'm not going to put any checks on myself. I'm just going to go full unconscious. My argument is you can do that stuff better, a lot better, if you've created levels above, you know. So, and like the book of Ecclesiastes says, or the song, there is a time to kill, a time to steal. There is a time, okay? There is a time for going mode 0 and going just full crazy. SOBC says, quick question, Ike. Would you share your inner battles, good and bad thoughts with the outside world? Um, are you asking if it's a good idea to share that, or are you asking me to share mine? Clarify, SOBC. Are you asking, which I think perhaps you are, if it's a good idea to share these inner battles with the outside world, or are you asking me to share mine? Let me know. Let me know. Gotta let my feelings show. Yeah, thought so. And by the way, questions, contributions, so on and so forth, join the stream. I just left the link down there. So, moderators, you got the link. Go ahead. Now, this is one of those things for which there is an objective response, and then there's a subjective response. And then there is an objective subjective response. So, objectively, I would say that it is best to err on the side of not sharing it. Objectively, I would say that it is best to err on the side of not sharing it. Now, when do you share it then? Because you share it when it is an aid to persuasion. Here's what I mean. An aid to persuasion, in other words, being relatable, being vulnerable is an aid to persuasion. I'm giving rather a clinical answer now. I sound like a psychopath. Which, by the way, is something that this is a cautionary tale for anyone who's going into this meditation stuff. Is don't be a psychopath, okay? If you're a psychopath, you're already gonna go down these lines anyway. You're already gonna do psychopath stuff anyways. But these capacities, let's say, are value neutral. It is not necessarily the case that when you get concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, that you're going to use it for the good. No, you can be very present and very presently doing some really, really evil stuff with all your capacities of concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity, manipulating the hell out of everybody. Okay? It's nothing that stops you from doing that. It is less likely though, because just because of the way the system is set up. However, let me continue to answer the question. I would say err on the side of not doing so, but when you need to pace and then lead, there's something called pacing and leading in any kind of leadership and communication, persuasion, and influencing. The pacing part is the part whereby you make people relate to you. The pacing part is the part whereby you make people understand that you're a human as well. So I said, and this is still just giving the objective answer. I'm going to speak subjectively afterwards. Objectively, stay away from it. Only do it when it is necessary for pacing people. When you want to say, hey, you're on my side, I'm on your side. And then the next step is to lead them. People don't want to be led until they've been paced, right? Pacing just means you're walking with them side by side. That's the imagery, right? You're walking with them side by side. He's one of us. And then you go in front, and then they will follow you. They will not follow you until they've seen you on their side, okay? So it is necessary for pacing, whether it's in a one-on-one relationship, okay? You need to do some pacing and leading in a it may be your spouse or something like that. Some pacing and leading needs to happen. But overall, I would err on the side of not doing it, but rather having your states, in by your states, I mean, your state of presence or lack thereof, and then your actions be the window through which people see you, right? As opposed to coming out and saying it. The reason why you shouldn't say it, I think, is kind of obvious because you can only say it with words. You can only say it with words, and the problem is obvious. The problem is obvious. Words. It can be taken and spun all kinds of ways, and they need to be absorbed by the other person's subjective filter. And if they're feeling emotional that day, they can take those words and spin it whatever way they want. They could receive it one way today and then 10 years down the line, bring back those words and weaponize it against you in a completely different way. And now it is out of your power. You no longer have the power. Once you put the words out there, you cannot take them back. They're now a weapon that could be used. Anything you say or do will be used against you in a court of law. So that is the objective statement, which is stay away from it. However, it is necessary for pacing and leading. It is necessary for since I like using provocative terms, it is necessary for manipulating people. It is necessary to share with them and to pace with them if you're going to influence, persuade, lead, communicate, be an effective communicator. So if it is not doing that purpose, then keep it back. Let the means by which people view you be your state, right? How you actually are. And then also your actions. Your state actually being more important than your actions, even. In other words, being present speaks everything that needs to be said for the most part. The subjective part is simple, and the subjective part is what you think it is. In other words, depending on your psychological predilections, proclivities, and so on and so forth, different people are going to have different places on which they land with this. I tend to be more of the guarded sort. Okay. And there is a reason why. So let me put it this way. If you're an introvert, you're not very skilled at sharing because you tend to overshare. Let me get a one in the chat if you guys understand, because there's probably a large group of introverts in here, because just because it's kind of how we roll. Introverts are not great with sharing. They're not very skilled at sharing. When they do share, they tend to overshare because they tend to overthink and they tend to overanalyze and they tend to go too deep into themselves. And when they say some stuff, they're talking. You're talking about alleys in the depths of your soul that some people don't even know they have. Okay? Some people don't even know what the hell you're talking about when you start telling them stuff. And people would judge you. And here's another thing about honesty. Like I like to be brutally honest with myself. It's also an introvert trait. We look at all the dark, unventilated, grimy parts of our soul and we own it. But when you tell somebody that stuff, they're like, oh my God, he's Hitler. And you're thinking, like, come on, you're that way too. But at that point, the conversation is already broken down and it doesn't really matter. Like, it's best to leave them alone, you know? Because trust me, most people have no clue what's going on inside them. And I cannot speak for them. But yes, so that's the subjective answer. If you're an introvert, don't share because you're going to overshare, and because you're looking at places that people don't even know they have. Don't do it. Okay. Great question though. Tavana Perry says, you're being transparent right now, and I find it beneficial. I think the key is to only be transparent when comfortable. For sure. For sure. For sure. But I've definitely learned the hard way that not everyone is as brutally honest with themselves as I am. And when you tell people some things, they cannot even fathom. Yeah. They think they don't think these thoughts, right? The people who literally think all they have is good thoughts, you know? They think they never think bad thoughts, which is just crazy. It's almost like saying, there are never any clouds in the sky. It's like, no, you don't think those thoughts. The thoughts happen. There's good thoughts happen and bad thoughts happen. For you to claim that you don't have bad thoughts or not able to receive, now I'm chastising those people, okay? Not being able to either perceive the dark side or not understanding when someone tells you the dark side and you thinking, oh my God, you know what? That's just showing your lack of consciousness because we all, okay, we all have it all in there, okay, from the highest heights to the lowest of the lows. And I tend to think that the lows are more common than the highs. In other words, the low, dirty, ridiculous thoughts, the murderous thoughts are more ubiquitous and universal. Okay, but not everyone is thinking Mother Teresa thoughts, but everyone is thinking murderous thoughts. Okay, everyone has killed somebody in their mind. But some people just act like, oh, I never, oh, never, which is trash. And those people are not free. So the freedom is what we want. We want the freedom to see every alley, every blind spot, everywhere in this mansion of feeling, image, and talk, which is the entirety of our subjective consciousness, and so on and so forth. And Taylor says, those people self-identify through external means so they don't introspect. Yes. And that's why that's why I called myself out when I said I'm chastising them. And that's why I gave this part as the subjective part of the question, the great question which SOBC asked. This is the subjective part of it. I already gave the objective part. The objective part is clear. Don't do it. Only do it when you need to pace and lead. Only do it when you need to be relatable, so on and so forth. It's a means of communication, influence, leadership, persuasion, so on and so forth, right? But the objective part is, okay, be careful if you're an introvert because not everyone operates in that mode. You're going to be telling people things and they're going to think you're crazy because they've never looked there. And since I'm not them, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing or not, to be honest with you. To be honest, I don't really, because they may just, as someone said, external, outward directed people tend not to introspect as much, and that's fine. Yes, I think I was reading a book earlier that says, a thought murder a day, is good for your it's good for your psychological health. Maybe it's a little extreme. Maybe one a day is a bit much. But the idea, okay, and it was said in a kind of a lighthearted way. But the idea of what was said there is you need to be able to think that thing through and not act on it because that shows you're actually healthy. If you're scared, again, this is about mastery, and I always use the knife analogy. If you're scared of touching a knife, that doesn't make you a safe person. It makes you dangerous. The safe person is the person that can pick up the knife and juggle with 5 knives. And you guys know what I'm saying, right? If you can pick up 5 knives and juggle with them, you're a lot safer than someone who never wants to touch a knife. No, I never go down there. Oh, I never think those thoughts. Oh, I never, oh, how dare, no, 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 no. That person is very dangerous because when it comes to knife time, which there's always a time for stuff, and knife time will come, they will kill themselves and everyone around them, and they're absolutely useless. But the person that can juggle with 5 knives, they're who you want on your side when it's time for a knife fight. Okay? Same thing with internal stuff. The people who are always avoiding they have their soul is filled with blind alleys. Soul is filled with alleys down which they never go. They never completely experience the depths of their dark side, the depths of their dark thoughts. Those people are very dangerous because one day they'll explode, and they often do explode, and they mess things up and they mess up their lives. So go in there, go to the dark alleys, look at it, become familiar with it, laugh at it, be like, ha 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 ha. Hello, darkness, my old friend, right? Juggle those knives. Become a master of feeling, image, and talk, regardless of which arrangement it's taken. Then you're a competent human being. Then you're living the life of a sage, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm saying that it makes you make better decisions. And then we go further. We're saying social connections and the ability to influence. Okay, this one is rather self-explanatory. This one is rather self-explanatory. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, again, the links are there. Questions, comments, concerns, confessions. So this last part is rather self-explanatory and I think intuitively understood. Just like we talked about equanimity, it's literally cool. Cool, calm, collected is socially attractive and appealing. It works. Okay? And for you men out there, that is the entirety of game. The entirety of game is equanimity. The entirety of game is concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. Presence is attractive. The space for freedom is attractive. It puts people, and vis-a-vis, the most popular video on my channel is the video whereby I said, be the most comfortable person in the room. It's one of my bicycle ride chats. If you're the most comfortable person in the room, you make other people comfortable. But let's just say you're not the most comfortable person in the room, but you at least want to be as comfortable as you need to be. I said be the most comfortable person in the room because I was talking about giving a presentation, influencing, selling, persuading. And if you think I don't use my Jedi mind tricks when I'm out there selling, of course you would be wrong. You Jedi mind trick them all the way to the bank. So, as we said, similar to the aesthetic appeal of equanimity, the aesthetic appeal of balance and relaxation and calmness and not being perturbed. Same thing here. Presence, okay, that's space for freedom. We all know the difference between talking to somebody who is not present versus talking to someone who is present. And we know whom we would rather talk to. And Young Swift says, for my introverts out there, don't become a sociopath either. LOL. Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, don't go crazy. But basically, this is the last part. Okay? This is the last part of the last part, which is that there is a social appeal to all of this. And it makes you appealing to be around. Rather be around the person who is present while we speak with them. They, in turn, have a big effect on us. They can actually influence us more. Okay? And this goes to my point about look, if you think Charles Manson didn't have some of these powers, wasn't able to be calm and concentrate while he was manipulating, you're mistaken. Hence the caution, just like Young Swift said, this is not something that inevitably leads to the good. We're all adults here, so there's no need to fool ourselves. And that's why I tend to do a lot of pushback on the bead wearing, namaste saying, oneness with the universe, everything is all good and gravy. No, it's not how the world works. No, you could totally go get off the handle with these things. You could totally use them for all kinds of stuff. A lot of cult leaders, okay? A lot of cult leaders are experts at meditation and hypnosis. Of course they are. Okay? Of course they are. So, to the point of never stopping and always looking down every blind alley and understanding fully well the full landscape. Because we're not scared little rabbits that need to be told that everything is sunshine and biscuits. Okay? We know that power is power. And this space for freedom, giving you power and agency, not being able, the ability to not be perturbed, creating this layer upon layer upon layer of observer, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do good stuff. I do think, though, that it is the direction of things. The direction of things tend to lead towards more of the good for the majority of people, because you will find that quote unquote the good, which is more of an arrangement of interactions, and the good is not a simple thing in this particular regard, right? Because we're talking about the good in terms of your interactions with other people and your actions that are taken, blah blah blah, manipulation versus not manipulation. That's a more complex thing, but overall you will find that it just leads to more peace and you getting what you want more. Right? So generally speaking, in the long run, for most people who are not psychologically damaged, having these capacities will lead them to actually be better people. But it doesn't mean that if you want to be a cult leader, that you could not become a cult leader using the same capacities. Is Ike starting a cult? Belvy says, so are religious and political leaders. Yes. So if I start a cult, it will be a cult where I tell you I'm starting it, right? You're like, yeah, I'm starting a cult. So we can all be there. We'll call it, I don't know. We'll come up with a name for it. Oh my God. So this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the end of the series, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you did. I hope you did. So let's look real quick here at the chat, and then I'll go ahead and give a final epilogue. Shallow soul, says Young Swift. Ah, yes, yes, yes. Thought crime. Yeah, that is thought crime. And you need to watch out. In the Minority Report, you want to be committing thought crimes. So, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and Goldie Jones says, Ike, this series has been so helpful. I'm going to listen to all parts consecutively to ensure I got it all. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, why should you meditate? Okay, I wanted to put this out there because the content in my channel, for example, when I had that thing about my pyramid method of energy regulation, or I talk about listen to your ears, or what are you doing with your hands, or be the most comfortable person in the room, all these things which I talk about, which have to do with practical things, or when I talk about aesthetics. Okay, I talk about business, sales, influencing, aesthetics, money, this, that, and the other. But there's always an aspect of it that has to do with mastery of subjective consciousness. Okay, and I put it in a very simple, measurable, actionable, intuitive way. Okay, but I wanted to do these series just to make it clear that all this stuff is coming from somewhere. It's coming from a place of active meditative practice. Okay? So why? Why should we do this? Let's apply the rubric of simple, measurable, actionable, and intuitive to it. We are feeling, image, and talk. We can develop three capacities called concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, with which we can observe, feel, and image, and talk. These capacities in and of themselves are both intrinsically valuable and extrinsically valuable. However, when you apply to feeling, image, and talk, all kinds of miraculous things happen, like less lowered blood pressure, lowered stress, the ability to have more freedom, the ability to understand yourself more, just living a better, freer, looser, happier life, and a longer one as well. Okay? And all these things are a result of these particular capacities, practicing meditation. So, the first three parts, concentration, being able to focus and then relax. Okay? And I said that all these three things interplay. So, focusing and relaxation, two sides of the same coin. You can relax so that you can focus, or you can focus so that you can relax. We said flow state. Either you're a sniper or free throw shooting machine. We said that this state, or you're Floyd Mayweather, that this is a state of high concentration and high relaxation. Okay? That the pinnacle of the game requires this. And in this channel, we talk about the pinnacle of the game because, as Donald Trump said, or likes to say, if you're going to be thinking at all, you might as well think big. Not everyone is going to be on the pinnacle, of course. But If you're a red-blooded human being walking this earth, you have no business thinking of anything but the pinnacle. And the pinnacle of the game leaves clues. It keeps telling you what it does, whether it's Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, whomever. They tell you what they do. They use many different ways of putting it, but we all know it's meditation. We all know what flow state is, and so on and so forth. So if you want to play little games, you can ignore that stuff. But come on, we don't play little games. We talk about the pinnacle of stuff here. And you want to be at the pinnacle of your sales game, or in a boardroom, or in a relationship, whatever it is in this world. When you get there, you're going to find people who know these things, and they're going to kick your ass if you don't know them. As a matter of fact, they keep telling you that they know them. They keep telling you that this is what they do over and over again, right? And it is the case, the higher up you go in any particular endeavor, the more people are going to have the basics. Okay? You're going to go into this high-powered boardroom for this particular meeting, trying to pitch some business idea or trying to shake down some people for some, whatever it may be. The higher up you go, it's guaranteed everyone in that room is smart. Okay? Everyone in that room's got these degrees and so on and so forth. Everyone in that room has, done rather spectacular things in their lives and won this award and that award and so on and so forth. Everyone has all these things. The last frontier is always the frontier of your subjective consciousness, the frontier of mastery of your own self. And in that battle, you're only competing with yourself. So whenever you get to the highest heights, be sure, whomever is across the table from you, they're gonna know this. They're gonna have their way. They're gonna have mastered themselves, whether through trial by fire or through whatever it may be, whatever their formal practice is, or wherever the confluence of historical experience that they've had has led them to that point. They're gonna have mastery of their subjective consciousness at a certain level. Otherwise, they would not be there. Hence, why I'm doing this series, which is just ending with this particular one, so that there is no question anymore as to why. And to take it out of the land of woo, because woo is an excuse why people don't do this stuff. People say, oh, yeah, I don't like Deepak Chopra. Oh, I don't like tarot card carrying hippie chicks, so I'm not going to do it. You ignore it when Floyd Mayweather says it, when Mike Tyson says it, when everybody that's ever done anything at the highest heights, you ignore what they say, and you want to say, ha ha ha, the yoga is full of mumbo jumbo. It's like the world is filled with mumbo jumbo. But you're just saying that because you're making excuses for yourself of why you're not going to do the work. So, more videos will continue to come out. I'll continue to talk about things such as, getting more into my pyramid method, about energy regulation, hydration, this, that, and the other, excellence in all forms. This is a channel about being better and doing better with a strong emphasis on doing. We do, we do, we do. There's only one way to learn things, which is to do. Everything is like riding a bicycle, okay? Everything is like riding a bicycle. Language, walking, blah, 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 everything is like that. In other words, it's all trial and error, and then it gets automated, set into the subconscious, and then it just runs. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end the stream with our theme song. Ending the stream with the theme, which is The Battle Within. Maybe I'll play 2 songs today. Maybe I'll play Battle Within, and then I'll play, you know what? Let's start with Green Hill and then we'll play Battle Within while we say our goodbyes in the chat.
By the Green Hill, my brother built shelter. Make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine unto you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the Green Hill down by the river. The harvest of the year and all the chaff is cast away. Marching then retreating to live to march on. All that the resources are depleting. Yes, it's just the price we pay. Emotions they are fleeting and lead many a man astray, tormented by the sword and the vagaries of war. The children of brethren cut down to the floor. Tyrants will freely born and the masses will applaud. All treaties and systems and kinships will fall. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my brother build shelter. Make sure there's room for another. Surely what is mine unto you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the Green Hill down by the river. Everlasting burn, the everlasting light. With passion and with verve, we shall tempt the edge of fate tonight. Cannons are blasting, hearts are filled with fire and fright. Weapons are massing, we're building them at higher heights. From depth of the sea to the soaring of the peaks, the children of brethren can't find their release. For vengeance or for peace, because the sorrow and the grief, the wind by the Green Hill will bring some relief. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my brother build shelter. Make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine to you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the Green Hill down by the river. Build shelter, make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine to you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the Green Hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the Green Hill down by the river. allegiance in our hearts, shed waters in our balls. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within.